Hey, hello friends. Thank you for joining me again today. I am up in my studio, which is kind of nice because it's quite cold outside. Last time I looked, it was 39 degrees, so my garage is pretty chilly, which is where I've been doing my big oil painting lately. So it's nice to have a job where I just get to sit down in my heated studio and work on an illustration. So this, without further ado, this is Daily Art Adventure number 561. I was mistaken the other day when I said 550. We're up to 561 just for fun. Developing the illustration, any illustration. Let me move you for a minute. So here is some of the work that I'm doing for a client. He's writing a book, biography of a man, a little boy, hello, Ali Riza, a boy who grew up before the Civil War and went on to become a prominent and successful businessman and philanthropist in the state of South Carolina. So these are the illustrations that I've done. Well, this is the only one that I've almost finished. My client came back and made a couple recommendations. One, he said, could you put more detail on the boy's face? And I got back to him and said, no. And I'm looking at it right now. Okay, tell you what, I'm going to put a little detail in the ear, which I don't think qualifies his face. This little white dot right there, I added just a few minutes ago before I started the broadcast. Little dark spot there. I'm just going to say, no, I'm going to put it, I want to be able to tell my client that I did something, but the fact is I don't want to do anything. The artist in me says, no, don't touch it. But the other things, he said a little bit more indication of the cultivated fields. So I've looked at this for a few minutes, and I think I can satisfy his desire for more indication of cultivated fields by doing slightly more shading between the rows, and then I'll come back with a pale green pastel pencil. By the way, these illustrations are being done, I'm going to call it a modified CF paint technique. If you've ever been to my mother website, dannelsonart.com, that's my real home-based website. If you've ever been there, no, I shouldn't say that. I should say if you've been to my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of about, I think, 15 videos where I demonstrate the technique of CF, or as I knew him, Chris Payne. He doesn't know me, but he and I were in the Dallas Society of Illustrators together for a very brief time in the mid-'80s, so over 30 years ago now. And he shortly thereafter moved away and became uber famous. And I moved away and became slightly famous. So anyway, this is the technique. It's a modified, and I'm not going to describe it at the moment any more than that. If I do my next illustration on camera, I will certainly walk you through what I mean by modified CF paint technique. Let me talk a little bit more about what it's like to do illustration work, what it's like to do illustration for real clients like this one. I wouldn't quite say I'm running into problems with this client, especially if this client ever happens to watch this video. Hey, Will, no, you haven't been a problem. But my relationship with my client, whose name is Will, actually, I'll change his name. His name is Doug. It's not really, it's Will, but it's too late. I already said that. That's right. You'll never know who will who. But let me describe what it's like working a little bit of what it's like working with typical clients. And here's what I have to keep reminding myself. And it's a challenge for an artist to work with a non-artist, because I don't know if you know this or not. Here's a real carefully guarded secret about me. I have been me my entire life. I know that's hard to believe, but I've never been anybody else. From childhood, all through youth, young adult, middle age, now into medium old age, I've never been anyone but me. And you know what? Neither have you. That's the cause of many of the problems on this planet. We are all us, and we've never been anybody else but us. So, okay, let me get a little more specific. What do I mean by that? Why does that matter? Well, most of the people that I, as an illustrator, over the decades, most of the people that I've done work for are not artists. That's why they hire me, right? If they were an artist, they wouldn't need to hire me. But it's precisely because they are not an artist, that's why they do have to hire one. The challenge is that because they are not artistic, and or let me see, how can I say that? What's a better word? Let me say it this way. Why are they not artistic? Now, many of them think that there's something wrong with their hand, and I've railed against this many times in the past, so I won't do it again here. But the artistic skill, yes, I have some skill in my hands. 4%, 6%, 8% at most. 92% of my skill exists between my ears. It's in my mind, not my hand. Okay, so the reason, by the way, now I'm just not doing anything related to what he told me to do. I'm just looking at an illustration, looking at a piece of art. Anyway, so the reason I'm an artist is because of the way I see the world. The reason other people are not artists, conversely, is because of the way that they don't see the world. Is the most perhaps precise way to put it. They, in fact, do not see the world the same way I do, nor do they see this illustration the same way I do. So this creates all kinds of tension because they're looking at it now with their ordinary eye. But let me jump in here and interrupt myself real quickly. I have to ask myself the question, who or for whom am I doing these illustrations? Answer number one, answer A, I'm doing these illustrations for my fellow artists. Or B, I'm doing these illustrations for non-artists. Which is the correct answer? The answer is I'm doing these illustrations, obviously, for non-artists, right? But here's what happens. And my client is also not an artist. So in a way, you should say, well, I should just take his viewpoint at absolutely face value and do what he says, because he's not an artist, and I'm doing these illustrations for non-artists. Are you with me so far? So I do indeed want to pay a lot of attention to what he says. But here's what actually happens. And trust me, I've been doing this for decades. Here's what actually happens. Ordinary people go through ordinary life, not paying really much of any attention to the thousands of illustrations that cross their path every year. But all of a sudden they find themselves in a position where they have to make artistic judgments about the illustrations that I provided for them. And all of a sudden they look at these illustrations through completely different eyes than they have the other thousands of illustrations. So it's getting a little bit complicated in here. Can you hear me? Who am I doing this illustration for? Artists or non-artists? The answer is not artists. Here's the catch. Am I doing these illustrations for non-artists who are looking casually, or am I doing these illustrations for non-artists who are looking critically? The answer is casually. My client is looking critically through his non-artistic eyes. He's scratching his head, analyzing carefully, and thinking. So because of that, see, he would do better if he could turn off his critical and just look with normalized, but he can't because he's paying money for these illustrations. So of course he's looking carefully. He can't help it. Do you hear the conundrum that's coming up here? The challenge that is arising? So I've got a client who is looking through his highly unskilled eyes. Boy, that's mean, isn't it? But that's the truth. He's looking critically at my illustrations through. Now, I'm not complaining here. This is the way every illustration you have to deal with this. Every client, unless you're dealing with a professional professional designer, like a graphic designer who's hiring. That's the best way to work, because they are in fact professional lookers at art. They're just not professional illustrators. Anyway, but anytime you have to do artwork for an ordinary human being who's paying you money, you have this problem. So, and here I can actually summarize. Let me point you at me for just a second. So I can actually, sorry, you fell down. Sorry about that. Okay. So I can actually summarize and simplify what happens in the mind of someone who's paying an artist money to do a drawing. They put on a different brain, completely understandable. And 90-some% of the time, that person, the person who's not an artist, but they're paying money to do an illustration for them, they look at the illustration and they say, I want more detail. Now let me point you at my illustration again real quickly. How do you like that slick camera move? Isn't it tricky? So a non-artist client says, hey, I want those to look more like fields. Hey, I want those to look more like trees. Hey, I want those faces to be more realistic. Hey, I want those seagulls, he didn't say these things, to be more obvious. Hey, I want those clouds to be more real. Hey, I want those feet to be more real. Hey, I want those blue jeans to be more real. Hey, I want those tools to be more real. Hey, I want those hands. Are you with me? This is the way almost all non-artists who are paying somebody to do their art, because they're looking like this. They're looking at little pieces because they're paying money, so they're a little bit concerned and worried about, wasting their money and getting not a good illustration. So they're looking at the illustration like through this little aperture. Say, hey, I want that red hanky. Now, and my client did not do that, but I can tell you that is what was going through his mind. So he said two things. One, I want that face more realistic, and two, I want the field to look more like a cultivated field, okay? Which is almost exactly what I would expect a non-artist to say, who's being critical. In other words, operating outside their normal way their mind normally works. But what's wrong with that? Okay, so I, as an artist, am going, no. That's not the way, Mr. Client, that is the way you're looking at the illustration because you're paying me money. That is not how your clients, the readers of this book, however, are going to look at this book, at this illustration. They're going to look at it as a whole. In fact, they're just going to glance at it. Their eyes will skitter. Their eyes will go face, feet, hand, hoe, cloud, boom, and they're done. They turn the page. So I have to do an illustration that is going to be read as a good illustration. And a good illustration is not one where every little punctilla of the illustration is obvious what it is. See, that's in one word. That's what a client wants. A client wants obviousness. Let me just make that even clearer. A typical client wants over obviousness. If you'll let me make up words again, I do it all the time. You know that. A client wants over obvious elements, which does not know. Okay, so he wants a photograph or he wants a hyper-realistic. But now let me be fair, because some clients go, oh, no, I don't want it hyper-realistic. So they try to tamp down their expectations. You say, no, it is an illustration. It's not a photograph. And so then they try to come back into balance. Anyway, so it's my job to take my client to do what he says, like I did down here, like I did on the face, but not to ruin the illustration because of their feedback. So it's a very delicate balance. To be a good illustrator, you have to handle people. You do. You don't have any choice. If you want to be a good illustrator, you have to get off your high horse, your artistic high horse, and you have to handle people really gently, because you have to remember they are not accustomed to looking at artwork the way you are. So you have to walk them through the process. So anyway, I hope that's done. I re-emphasized let me explain a little bit. Why don't I want to come in here and make these rows of fledgling plants? Why don't I want to come in here and make them hyper realistic or obvious? You know the answer, don't you? Why? Because the point of this illustration is not down here. See, my client doesn't think that way. He doesn't think, because he's not an artist, and I don't blame him, not upset. This is typical. I'm just trying to talk to you guys, my fellow artists, who you may be thinking about a career in illustration. We, the creators of this, we do not want to draw people's. This is not the important part of the illustration. If it had been, you know, if the name of the book had been Mysteries in the Cornfield or something like that, and it was about, you know, magic gold kernels that were appearing in the soil, I would have done the illustration completely differently. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is this boy and his friend, mostly this one and partly this one. So what do I want our clients to look at? Faces, not cornfield. I'm putting the word corn. It's actually probably cotton field. Does that make sense? That's why I will, in a sense, not do what my client said. Now, I think he'll be happy with this, by the way. But that is why I'm not going to go crazy and make this like hyper-realistic, because it would draw too much attention. You guys know that already. You're artists. So let's move on to the next one. So I have my next illustration is not nearly as developed as that one. Well, that one's finished. This is not finished at all. Let me show you. So this is obviously an illustration. I did several, you can tell. Yes, I did there, and then I turned it over and traced it and added shading to it. And then get this, I scanned it into my computer, scanned it into Photoshop, right? And in Photoshop, I did two things. After looking at it for several more minutes, I said, oh, you know what? His head is hanging down too far. He looks really depressed here. So in Photoshop, I took his head and lifted it up. The other thing is I made him a little bit longer and skinnier, because I got the feeling from my client that he feels realistically or not, he feels like this is a rather tall, thin man. I've seen a whole bunch of pictures of him. He's thin. So I want to make sure he's thin. So I stretched him out in Photoshop and I moved his head. Okay, so this is what I said to my client a couple weeks ago. And here's the list of changes. I went ahead and printed out all the things that my client said in response to this illustration. I don't know if I'll read them all, but I'll read some. I should have mentioned that he was shot in the left leg. First of all, I already know that. I read the book. Anyway, the crutch should be under the left shoulder. Now, I'm not sure what he was looking at. It may be the image I sent to him was a flopped image of this. And that's a very reasonable feedback from a client. Once again, though, my client is not correct. Okay, now let me move you guys again. I want to talk to you for just a minute. Again, this episode is only perhaps going to be interesting to any of you who are even considering a career in illustration. How to put this? I've been me my whole life. You've been you your whole life. So I don't really know how other illustrators work. But I can tell you how I work. The story is of a man whose left hip was crushed by a bullet in the Civil War. He almost died. His wife nursed him back to health, literally nearly from the edge of the grave, pulled him back. That's part of the reason it's such an amazing story, because he actually went on to become a very successful businessman and philanthropist. Now, if you've seen me, in fact, I think I did this a couple weeks ago when I was doing it. Let me stand up for a minute. Because if I have to illustrate a man who's been shot in the left hip, I don't have a crutch here in my room. But I do have a yardstick. So I'll do things like this. I don't know if other illustrators do this or not. No, let me put it this way. This might be a little bit snobby, but if you want to be an illustrator, you need to know this. The good ones do this. Okay? What do the good ones do? That is, the good ones are not artsy-fartsy, just drawing like, oh, I can draw pretty pictures. Watch, I'm going to draw a guy that got shot in the hip. No. A good illustrator will say, okay, so I'm shot in the left hip. Does that mean my crutch is under my left arm, or is my crutch under my right arm? Do you understand? I also Googled, literally, which, I can't remember the verbiage, but the idea was, if you have one crutch or one cane, do you put it, I might have used the word doctor in my search because I want a doctor's recommendation. If you have an injured leg, do you do the crutch on the same side as the injury or on the opposite side of the injury? Yeah, okay, the point is, it doesn't matter what answer I came up with. The fact is, there have been seasons in my life just a year and a half ago, in fact, where I used crutches for a while and then a cane for a while. And the answer is, the real answer, so that the point is I'm getting to is, if you want to be a good artist, you have to be way more than an artist. You have to be a researcher. You have to be a physical therapist. You have to figure stuff out because you just don't go drawing stupid stuff. You have to do research. Here's the classic. Years ago, probably 10 years ago now, maybe 12, I was doing an illustration for a big ad agency here in Raleigh, and the assignment was to do a dairy cow, several dairy cows in this illustration. And I grew up in Michigan, first of all, southern Michigan, like Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, southern Michigan is dairy country, man. I mean, I had friends, lots of friends, friends and friends of friends who grew up on dairy farms, and I've been on dairy farms. So I have a strong impression of what dairy cattle look like. But what did I do? I Googled. And I still remember 14% of there's 5 different dairy cattle in America: Guernsey, Jersey, Holstein, Ayrshire, and blanks. 10 years later, I can remember 4 of the 5. Guernsey, Jersey, Ayrshire, and Holstein. Holsteins are black and white. Now, I say all this not to show off or to brag, but to instruct. This is what illustrators do. And I actually remember Ayrshire, 14%. Holstein, 51%, something like that. And I at the moment, like 10 years ago, I knew the 5 and I knew the percentages of each one. Not because I'm a genius, just because I was interested. You remember things you're interested in, by the way. So anyway, I did a sketch for them and I sent it to them. In fact, I think it was a finished illustration. And I did a brown and white cow. Could be a Jersey or a Guernsey. And the art director, actually it wasn't the art director, it was the account executive, came back and said, all dairy cows are black and white. I don't know that he said it with that tone of voice, but he was a blithering idiot. And this is what you have to deal with when you're an illustrator. You have to deal with blithering idiots because they think that you're just somebody who draws pictures with your hand. Anyway, good illustrators don't draw pictures with their hands. Good illustrators draw pictures with their entire being. Now, you just saw me standing up and doing research on Google. Anyway, so my client here, I just want to give you a realistic, one of my favorite illustrators is a guy named James Gurney. He did Dinotopia. When he does an illustration, he actually builds, it's called maquettes. He actually builds models of what he's going to illustrate and then lights it and then photographs it and does his illustrations from the photographs. He builds models of buildings and houses and trees and dinosaurs in his case. Okay, so again, that's what good illustrators do. So anyway, my client says crutch should be under the left arm. He's wrong about that, but it's my job to be nice because I'm doing this for money. So I say, yeah, no problem. But after all is said and done, I said you can flip it. He could take his illustration and either print it this way or this way, whichever makes him happy. The fact is, if a person's using one crutch, I know from experience, you get tired and sore, so you switch. Be that as it may. Just interesting, that's what an illustrator does. And now he says he looks almost morose. Now this is good feedback from my client. He says he looks almost morose. I get that. He says, I'd like a look of determination, even a bit of joy and trust in the Lord showing on his face. Now, and then he says, if that's possible. That's a good word from a client, if that's possible. Also, a bit of sweat on the face or coming off of it. And then he changes the illustration because he could have told me this first time around, but he didn't. Again, typical, this is what clients do. In the background, please include the horse with a plow attached and a freed slave working the plow behind it. Add cultivated rows, once again. All right, this is typical. Go ahead and make it in color, even if it ups the price. Again, the only people who probably will care about this, all of this, are people. And by the way, for some reason, my chat's not showing up. Let me see if I can fix that. Hang on. Hang on. I want my chat to be showing up for sure. Come. It says here I've got 14 chats and only one is showing up. Now 2 are showing up. There we go. All right. Is there a difference between an artist and an illustrator? Thinker 888. Glad I caught that one. Fantastic question. Not a dumb question at all. Fantastic question. Here's the funny answer I've been using the most lately for that is an illustrator gets paid for his work and a fine artist does not. In other words, when you do fine art, you're very often, not always, but often you're doing paintings that are going to go to a gallery that you hope will sell, and you get paid if they sell. An illustrator is typically contracted and is doing the bidding of his client for money. So that's why if you want to be an illustrator, you have to have some people skills, because you're going to deal with people who are not artistic, and you have to satisfy them. You can't get on your high artistic horse like I've been with you guys. I would not treat my client the way I've just been describing to you. Okay, so here I am, going to redo this drawing, and he looks. The main thing I want is look of determination with even a bit of joy on his face. Now here's one. I'm going to hold it in my pencil the wrong way, because all of a sudden I'm okay, just between you and me, how do I make this guy? By the way, he had full facial hair his whole adult life. So how on earth do you show determination on a guy whose face and mouth is covered with fur? That is a good question. I actually have a guess. And you want to know what it is? Has nothing to do with the face. Has more to do with the angle of the brim of his hat. Now, I might be wrong, but I'm going to guess that my client won't realize what is influencing his feeling. But my guess is that my client is more influenced by the angle of this guy's hat than he is anything else. We will find out together if I'm right about that. The other thing I can do, of course, is I can do kind of a determined brow. For eyebrows that are rather pursed together in the middle, like a look of determination, but then hit a little bit of a smile line, so which you can't see his smile lines because it's covered up with mustache. Again, typical. This is non-artists don't think this way. Non-artists, my client didn't think, well, golly, we can't see his face because he's got a full beard. He has a full beard and mustache, not a little skinny 20th century mustache, but a great big billowy 19th century mustache. That's what all the photographs. And if I get that wrong, I know good and well my client will come back to me and say, because he's already done similar already, say, no, he's got a full beard, blah, 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 blah. So how do you show look of determination? I'm going to guess maybe his eyes open a little bit more, lifted up. But I think the biggest thing is actually simply, believe it or not, going to be the rim of his hat raised up. And then a slight mustache raised up ever so slightly, and maybe slight smile lines here and extending out the edges of his mustache a little bit, as if he's got a lips together, not grim, but determined look. Okay, that is the word that my client used. So we're going to see. I have no idea if my client's going to go for this or not, but this is what happens. My client is not an artist, so he doesn't think in anatomical terms. He doesn't think, oh, wait a minute, you can't see his mouth because of that beard. It's not his job to think that way. Okay, also, by the way, right? So I'm not being arrogant or superior. I mean, my client is a successful businessman, very typical of, who asks artists, who pays illustrators to do artwork? Successful people or broke people who haven't ever done anything really with their life? The answer is generally successful people. Now, the broke people will ask me if I'll do an illustration of their book for free, and the answer is no. Sorry, you should have got me when I was 20 years old, but you're 45 years too late. I don't do free anymore. I did when I was 20 for the experience. Just think of the exposure it'll give you. That's what people say now. Oh, don't say that to, no, you say that to young artists. Don't say it to mature artists. Exposure, smosure. I don't need, it's not what I need at this stage of my career. I need cold hard cash. Okay, so he looks a little bit determined, don't you think? Yeah, and I mean, it's not a great drawing. I'll probably turn it over. Okay, the other thing I can do is make sure, perhaps have him standing up a little taller. Now, and maybe bring this shoulder down a little bit. And the top of his crutch. There we go. Hang on just a second. Let me grab one of my handy dandy tools. Electric pencil sharpener. If you want to be a good illustrator, you need an electric pencil sharpener. It saves all kinds of time. There. So yeah, lowering his shoulder down, make him look a little less forlorn. And again, I don't expect my client to understand. My client won't say, oh yeah, you lowered his shoulder, now he looks more buoyant in person. Do you understand? Again, I'm trying to help you understand typical client-artist relationships. It's not their job. I think often, well, like the cow story I told you a little while ago. My client, and yeah, I guess it's mildly offensive. Why would he not think I did research? Well, because it just never dawned on him that artists do research. He just and the reason is because most people think that artists draw pretty pictures. That's what artists do. They draw pictures. I'm mispronouncing the word on purpose. But that's not what good illustrators do. So perhaps they'd worked with not so good illustrators before they got to me. But I don't expect my client here to go, oh yeah, if you lower his shoulder, it will give him more of a look of determination. Earlier, and with this illustration, I was trying to give him the impression that his hip still hurt. So there was a lot of weight on the crutch. See, now what I've done here by lowering his crutch is either he's really flexing his pectoral muscles and lats to get this shoulder down and his body up. But I know from good experience that you can't go through too many hours of the day with your pecs and your lats flexed enough to hold up your weight. You just get exhausted and you develop really sore armpits. Do you understand? So this is what, again, I think this is what good illustrators do. You have to think anatomically believable. The other thing I had is I determined, rightly or wrongly, so this man has been injured for a long time and he's out there working in his field, hoeing with one hand. That's part of the story. And I determined that if a man had actually done that, he would have discovered that actually helped to saw off the end of his hoe. You don't want full length. Now I've extended it here, and I'm debating whether I want to do that. I guess I'll leave it because I think my client was a little bit confused by this short hoe. I'm not sure about that, but again, non-artists, and I guess lousy artists too, they don't think through these things, but a good illustrator, And I used the illustration a minute ago of the example of James Gurney, who went, and I've heard of others, many others, who went so far as to actually build maquettes and photograph them, light them, dramatic lighting, and then photograph them. Man, that's extensive. Do you hear me? Now, I see one weakness I'm having in these illustrations. All of a sudden, I just realized, and here's the third illustration I haven't got to yet. Okay, this one's not so bad. I was going to say I have a very low angle on both of these, which that could be a weakness. I do not want to have similar angles, viewpoint. You know what I mean? Like in this image right here, the camera is about 1 foot off the ground because we're looking up at him. Now I did that very much on purpose because I want sort of a heroic view of this man, even though he's in pain and broke and sort of beaten down by circumstances of life. He's it's a big part of the story. He's overcoming his adversities with great fortitude and personal strength. So to convey that feeling of heroic, we're looking up at him. That's great. The bad part is now I've got 2 illustrations, both of which are angle. Again, I don't expect my client to pick up on that. I don't expect the readers of this book to be going through, hey, wait a minute, all these illustrations are the same viewpoint. That's not what they would do. It would be subconscious. They would find themselves mildly less pleased than I would like them to be. But I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay because the third illustration here is, I'm actually going to raise the viewpoint a little bit. This is after General Sherman, the Northern Union Army, went through his county in South Carolina. All he was left with was 1 old horse, 2 partial bags of seed, and his shattered hip. Oh, no. See over here, I've got his hip under his crutch under his right shoulder. But you know what? If we want, we just turn it over, and now it's under his left shoulder. Got it? So I'm not even going to worry about which shoulder I put it under. Unless I have lettering on the bag. Unless I have writing that you can read, then you can't turn it over. All right, let's go back to this. Are you with me? Now we got a few comments coming in. Hot dog, Rick says, catching live broadcast. Glad you're here. Hey, right? Good, glad to hear you think it looks, smile lines at the eyes are perfect. Okay, so trying to make them look determined. Now, I think I had in my earlier sketch, I can get rid of this now. Yeah, definitely. I feel like the light and the shading are really important in this illustration. So I'm going to go ahead and once again, as an illustrator, I feel like this is what you do. I know I'm talking, again, I expect this whole broadcast maybe only to be highly entertaining or interesting to people who want to be illustrators. I guess some of you, maybe you want to know, but a very determined farmer is out working his field in the heat of the day. At least that's what I want to convey. So it's not just, an hour before sunset and an hour before after sunrise that he's out there. No, he's out there slaving away, if you will, in the heat of the day. So I'm gonna make very, very downward lighting. I don't know about you. You think for a few minutes, because we're so spoiled, aren't we? What was it like to live all these centuries of human history without air conditioning? And here in North Carolina, it gets pretty hot in the summer. And of course, all the people from Houston and Florida are going, yeah, in Alabama, you think it's hot up there. Okay, I know. Stay with me. Just like my northern friends say, 39 degrees. That's a heat wave up here. I know. But anyway, it gets pretty hot. Gets pretty hot here in North Carolina. And this is South Carolina in the summer. And dang, it's got to be just hot as blazes. So I do actually like my client's idea of sweat. The problem is, I think something like this is going to be just too corny. Maybe I can get away with one and a trailer. see one drip and a tiny drip behind it. That seems a little corny. I think I'm going to indicate. I think I'm going to be able to indicate if there's any indication of sweat. It will be with some white specks in the color phase, but I can't indicate that in this an a sketch that is this rough. That's what I'm trying to say. This sketch is too rough to indicate sweat on his face. Except maybe I don't know. I'll decide later whether I think I can get away with. Do you know what I mean? That's a little bit corny. It's a little bit cartoony to have a piece of sweat literally flying through the air at that moment. Okay, I think so. This is what he saw. This is what he's going to see. Yeah, determination, little overcoming joy, so to speak. The joy of overcoming, perhaps, is a better way to put it. I do like this man, but this character. And right at the moment, I'm sorry, his name is escaping me. It'll come back to me, and I'll share it with you. But yeah, pretty inspiring story. I can see why his great grandson would want to write a biography of this man. The name of his company, I believe, in South Carolina is Sunoco. Not like the gas station SU, but SO, Sunoco, and it's still a pretty big company down there for anybody watching who's from South Carolina. This is the story of the founder of Sunoco. He's a pretty good example of why anybody with any character and brains, forgive me, doesn't go along with the socialist mythology, ubiquitous in some of our political dialogue these days. Sorry, that's as political as I'm going to get. It's already way too much for some of you. I'm in the process, by the way, for what it's worth. I'm in the process of reading Karl Marx's Das Kapital. And I have strong opinions and impressions. I won't go into it, but I will tell you that I have some opinions that are of some benefit because I'm reading the book. All right, the book. Yep, that's right, the book. Karl Marx, Das Kapital. Socialism is thinly veiled compassion for the poor. No, it's masquerades as compassion for the poor. It's actually thinly veiled, organized, institutional envy. That's what it is. And when the Ten Commandments, whether you believe in God or Bible or anything else, give us universal principles for human evolution. And one of them is don't envy. It's a bad path, bad way to go. And socialism is organized and structured envy. Once you see that, once you understand that, then you understand a whole lot that's coming out of the leftist progressive agenda. It's organized envy. And you can say to people, how's that working for you? And all you have to do is look through history to see how organized envy works for people that embrace it. Okay, that's enough. I keep saying that's enough, then I say more. Now, here I have a problem. Okay, because he wants a horse plow and freed slave working behind the plow, and I've run out of paper. What do you do then? A couple options. One is I could put this on my scanner, print it smaller on a piece of paper going this way. That's a good option, but I'm going to do something even quicker than that, and that is I'm simply going to connect two pieces of paper together. High-tech, you call this. High-tech solution. Oh, sorry, messed up. Okay, by the way, okay, here, if I'm going to let me do this right for some of you who've never done this. You take two pieces of paper, you cram them together. This is removable Scotch tape. Very convenient tool, okay? You can buy it at any office supply store. Removable tape. Comes off easily. Now, then I can turn this over, and with more care, abandon, precision, and speed. Put permanent tape on the back. You with me? Then you turn this over and remove that, and voila, we have a near perfect seam, plenty good enough for purposes of this illustration. So here we go. So we're going to add a horse and a plow. Now, let me see. I did not bring my back up, so forgive me. I'm over here leaning off camera for a minute. Well, here, hang on. I'll move you so you can follow me in this operation. All right. Again, this is what an artist does. This is what a good illustrator does. This is, and I think I'm saying motivated to say all these. Hang on, saying horse and plow, HORSEPLOW. I think I'm motivated to say all this stuff because I think when I was a young artist, you know, I was a talented kid, but I don't think I had any idea the degree of work. Boy, that's awfully small. Here, let's switch. Okay, I'm going to change the parameters here to size, large. I don't think I had any realistic, I know, I had no realistic appraisal of the kind of work that a good illustrator did, that went through to produce an illustration. I was way too flippant, way too casual, horribly undisciplined. And in that regard, I was similar to most young artists. Wow, look at that. Okay, now I can copy image, and then switch to Photoshop. New, yeah, clipboard, paste, flatten. Hang on with me for just a minute. Now I'm going to crop this. It's not a great photograph by any means. Okay, crop. Let's change the, yeah, there we go, lighten it up. I'm going to lighten it up even more. Now, I probably won't get much more benefit. Whoops, sorry. I'm leaning way over here. I don't know if there's any information in that space or not, but let's see. If I lighten this, will I see more of the horse? Oh, yeah. Oh, hallelujah. He commenced to praising the Lord. Okay, so I did get quite a bit of information. Now I'm going to print this. I don't have to print it. I could get by with scale to fit. There we go. I could just print from the image. What I would often do, let me move you guys again, is just if I weren't broadcasting, I would just have this image come up on my phone. Oh, look, it says historic images. There. Do I have to draw that part? Let me. Do I have to include the historic images part? This is a workhorse. Now, this is not the same horse. I wonder if my client wants the same almost dead horse that I had in the earlier drawing. I'm just gonna assume for the moment that this is not that same horse. That this is a little bit later, and he's managed to get a horse. I'm not sure my client is going to go for that. Maybe not. Here's a yoke. Wow, and I've seen, you know, what part of this illustration I would have completely missed. I completely forgot that a man working a horse and plow had, I don't know which part of the rein, but he has reins around his neck. I've seen that before. Now that I saw it in the photograph, I go, oh, that's right. But I would have completely missed that. Okay, so the end of my illustration is about there. So here's what I'm going to do. This part over here doesn't count at all. I'm going to take a quick picture of this and send that to my client for his approval. There's too many changes. I'm not comfortable. I'm going all the way to finished illustration. But while I'm on the subject, I have one more illustration. And the only thing he said about this one was change it from 2 bags to 1 bag. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to move you guys again. We're going back to the computer just for a minute. I maybe should stop broadcasting completely, but let me walk you through this just for what it's worth. It might not be worth anything, but we'll find out. Here's the folder that has all these jobs in it. Here's this illustration. So we're open up, and I'm going to go into, whoa, let's soften the edge of that. And let's not make it 100%, so I can just kind of erase it gradually. It doesn't have to go to white. Okay, so I'm erasing this other feed sack. I don't know why, because the story is he had two bags of seed. So I'm not exactly sure why my client suggested only one, but that's his prerogative and his job. All right, so let's print that off. Print. There we go. And I will work from that. So that's probably a good place for me to pause. I've shown you, I think, plenty more than you wanted. More information than you wanted about how to develop illustrations. Now, in this illustration, see, I really did try to indicate which hip. It's this hip right here, clearly, in my mind, that is injured. And again, the doctor's recommendation, the physical therapist website that I looked up, said that most of the time, the approved method is if your left leg is hurt, your crutch is under your right shoulder. Believe it or not, kind of counterintuitive, because I think most people think it's the opposite of that. They think you do it on your left side if your left is hurt. Anyway, I won't beat that horse. Speaking of beating horses, I won't beat it any more than let's just let it go at that. I might actually go back into Photoshop and move, if we only have 1 bag. I don't know, do we want them all in a line? No, normally a triangle would be better. So I think I'm actually going to go into Photoshop and manipulate that a little bit more. But that's good enough. I think I've tormented you guys long enough. Let me see if there's any comments I've missed here. Jackson Wright. Sorry, Jackson. My friend Wright says, indicate the sweat with the armpits and the sweat line of the hat. Hey, that's not a bad idea. So Jackson suggests, so try to show the sweat on his clothes and sweat on his, so maybe irregular, dark patch on his hat. That's a good idea. I don't know if I can see his armpit here. Maybe this one. But not a bad idea. I like that idea, right? So I'll see if I can squeeze that in. All right, you guys. If I start doing something else really exciting, well, Renan says, keep going, please. Are you sure? Are you sure? One person wants me to keep going. And of course, I mean, it's not like any of you are captives. The moment you get bored, you click off to something else. Believe me, I use YouTube. I know how it works. Okay, well, I'll let you watch this much. And by the way, my high-tech camera switch version here is pretty fancy, huh? Don't burst my bubble. I'm enjoying this new system here. And I'm working on upgrades more. All right, so I'm over here at my computer for real now. I put on my computer glasses, which, by the way, are great, and so that it's like the prescription of the bifocal part down here over the whole lens, so that the whole screen. So I don't have to go like this. That's only of interest to you fellow oldsters. All right, can you see what I'm doing at all? If I'm going to do this, I might as well zoom in enough so you can even watch me. So I am circling this bag of seed. There you go. Copy and paste. We're going to change this. Now, this is only interesting to you guys who are perhaps Photoshoppers. I'm going to extend the canvas this way. And now I'm going to fill up that part of the canvas with gray stuff. Whoa, whoa, wrong setting. Oh, we have a layer, so forgive me for messing up there. This is all just standard Photoshop stuff, Photoshop tricks. By the way, though, when I sent rough sketches to my client, I added this gray value, even though the original sketch, was done on white paper like this. In Photoshop, it's easy to gray out and then drop in light, bits of light, so that they're getting more of a half-tone experience. They don't have to know, how I did it, or that I did it in Photoshop, but I'm telling you guys. Okay, erase this. Okay, so now, where do I want this bag of seed? I don't know, but I'm gonna get rid of some of the stuff outside the bag of seed. There we go. Does it work better? Now that I've done that, I'm going to cover up the old bag of seed. Stamp it out of existence. It's a Photoshop stamp, so to speak. All right. One bag. Well, the nice thing is, because he went from 2 bags to 1, we now have 3 distinct elements in the illustration, which is a little bit more pleasant. Yeah, I think I kind of like it like that. What do you think? Yeah. And then make the shadow. Let me go ahead. No, I won't make shadow. Let me crop it though. So it'll fit on 8.5 by 11, or fit on something. Fit on something. Do you like that technical term? Technical terminology. Okay, crop. The crop function on my Photoshop doesn't work, by the way, in case you're wondering why. Some of you Photoshoppers, why is it doing it that way? That's why. Okay, print this out. And move you back to my table. Well, you're getting a generous dosage of what it's like to be an illustrator. Good shot of my bare head there. So I want to make it's clear, and again here what I'm drawing on here, it's a bad pun, is my my yeah, shadows going to the left, is my anatomy study. You have to know what the human body looks like if you're going to draw the human body. You can look, you can find models, you find photographs and copy them, but there's so many times that it would be extremely laborious. So here I am once again, a low viewpoint. That does disturb me only a little bit. Doesn't disturb me a lot, but it concern me a little bit. I think I'm going to send this to my client as well, because just say, is this what you want? Is that close enough? And here, if he comes back and says, no, it's his left. The crutch should be under his left arm. At that point, I might try to very, very delicately pull rank, so to speak, real gently, and say, well, actually, just to make sure, I have my own experience, but just to make sure, I actually Googled, and physical therapists, doctors recommend blah, 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 blah. If your left hip is injured, it's on your right arm. I don't know that. I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope he trusts me as an artist and sees that it looks good that way. A little indication of seed in here. So with that, I will indeed end my broadcast. I wonder, sorry, I say that and then I keep going. I wonder if a diagonal line of some kind, I'm not sure what that is, what the line is, but there's just lots of lines on the ground. You buy that? If you grow up in the farm, there's lines everywhere, lines on the ground everywhere if you grow up on the farm. Why's he got a bag of seed right in the middle of the highway? I can't figure that part. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, so, why's he got here's my lines. Why's he got, I hope that's not what he thinks. Okay, I zoom out. Sorry, Renan. Got it. Thinker, have I ever done a project? Absolutely, I certainly have. Not a lot, but enough. I've done several for a fishing boat manufacturer in Greenville, North Carolina. Grady White Boats. I did a bunch of Photoshop only illustrations. It was fun, and it was a huge job. Hello, Evan Lobes. Donna here. Oh, it's not Evan, it's Donna. I should have read first. All right, there. Enough shenanigans. Thank you guys. Thanks for your company. You gotta kind of make life just a little bit more interesting for me. And I know that's, it's all about me after all. So appreciate you participating with that agenda. Okay, out of here. Bye-bye.